The first time that I saw the book of Ian Howorth, I was staying there watching just the single pictures. I was completely lost on it, thinking about I'm missing something. Something happened in these pictures. I'm not seeing that now. It happens before. It's going to happen like in some minutes. So welcome to this episode of Photobook Cult, and I'm here with Ian, and I'm super glad to have you here, Ian.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for the kind words.
Thanks. This is the formal part that we have to do all the time.
I understand.
Feeling so bad doing it. But what I said is really, it's completely true. I spend really a lot of time looking at every single image in your book, and to be honest, I get lost.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think in many ways, that was what I wanted. I think, even before we get into the book in a minute, I think what I can say is that when I was going through the process of thinking about what I wanted, is I wanted the pure emotion from the book to hit the reader straight away. And that meant that every design choice that we made had to be, in my eyes, for me at least, perfect. So the font had to match the idea that you might have behind the images, and the texture of the paper had to be the right texture to match the images, so that when you leaf through the book, at no point were you taken away from the world that we wanted to put you in. It needed to be something that was consistent and to keep you there.
Yeah.
And that was hugely important to me, yes.
And I think it works perfectly.
I hope so.
Of course, it's something that you can feel watching the book, but I also read something here and there. You put a lot of yourself in this book, and there is a huge personal experience and research. It's about England.
It is.
But not only.
Correct. Yes, I mean, that summarizes it perfectly. This is a bit of a continuation of my first book, Arcadia, but I wanted this to be more about the place rather than about myself. The first one was, I felt more about me, and this one I felt more like the book was about the place itself. But obviously, because we're all singular, subjective creatures, there's obviously something of you in everything that you do, from what camera you choose to shoot it with, to how you position yourself, to the moments that you choose to capture. There's always something of you in there, so it's not just about any one thing. But in terms of how I saw the book, that's kind of how I saw it, as a continuation of something.
Well, why you felt this strong feeling to need to investigate about England?
I think, if I'm completely honest, obviously my personal experiences have a lot to do with it. It's I landed in England. I'm originally Peruvian, and I lived in Peru until I was 12 years old, and I didn't come to England until I was 16, 17 years old. But I'd been here a few times before, visiting my dad's family and whatnot. So I knew about the place, but I didn't know it in the same way. And obviously, because of my own personal issues with identity and whatnot, and not really feeling like you fit in anywhere, it became a bit of an issue that photography helped me work out. And that's very much what happened kind of in the first book. So I think in many ways, I could have landed in Italy, or I could have landed in Russia, or I could have landed anywhere, and I would have always felt this disconnect between myself, my personal identity, or what I was born with, to where I was at that point. So I think England for me just happened to be the place that I was. I'm not a hugely nationalistic person. I don't really believe in all of that. I think a lot of everything that happens to us is by chance. But England just happened to be somewhere that is, culturally understood by a lot of countries, because of the impact that England and the UK has had on the world. A lot of it negative, a lot of it positive. So I think in terms of the visual language that you can create around England is something that whilst not everyone might feel it in the same way that someone English would, is something that I think can be understood in a similar way. a bit like, you don't have to go to New York to understand what New York looks like or feels like or might even smell like, because it's so much a part of worldwide culture, and I think England lends itself to that quite well in terms of its natural visual language.
We can start going through the book and keep talking about these topics, because of course it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's about that. So
yeah.
Starting from the cover.
Well, what a...
No, sorry, I interrupt you. Starting from the title.
Starting from the title, okay. Well, if we go quite literally, it's actually a borrowed sentence or a borrowed part from a song by Bill Callahan. The song is called One Fine Morning, and I'm just a massive fan of Bill Callahan. He's just a very emotive artist. So from that point of view, I felt like he was the right artist. If I was going to choose someone to plagiarize, it was going to be him. But he mentions this line, and I've taken it slightly out of context, because what I liked about how I borrowed it is that it kind of has two meanings, but neither meaning makes sense, and as a sentence it kind of doesn't make sense either, and that's kind of what I liked about it. But I also think it sounds quite poetic as well, and soft, and I think that's what I wanted. And also it has something to do with a country in terms of a nation, but country can also mean countryside. So there's a lot of ambiguity with the title, and I think that married itself quite well to some of the ambiguity with the images inside, because some of the images are, or I've been told, are beautiful, but they're of ugly things, and I like that ambiguity. So I wanted that theme to carry along through the entire book, from the cover all the way to the end.
Is him from England?
No, Bill Callahan is he's English. Yeah, sorry, he's American. Yeah, he's American. So I think for me that was like and it took a while to arrive at a title. A title is incredibly important, as is the cover. Do
you struggle a lot to find the right title or not?
Very much so. It was and I have a lot of self-doubt. Not so much in terms of photography. I think I'm okay with that now. But I don't think the title will ever be something that I'll feel comfortable with until the day that I die. If I carry on producing photobooks, I think I'll always struggle with that, because not that I'm a perfectionist, but I always think that things can be better, and that research phase could potentially never end if no one stops me. So I think I will always struggle with that. But I think, like I say about a lot of things, it's not about achieving perfection. It's so long as you arrive at something that does make sense to you. And I think this one just made sense to me. And obviously you've got people that you can ask that will tell you whether something sounds good. And this one seems to hit the right mark with a lot of other people that I trust. But
probably it's going to be like this for you forever.
Of course.
For me too. But it's true that outside there are some titles that are amazing and work so well. Just to speak about a book that we have here on the table, Sleeping by Mississippi.
I mean, it's
super easy. It's stuck in your mind for quite a lot.
And some of them actually give me like a shiver. Sometimes I love words. I've always loved words. I'm obsessed with words, and like good words that resonate have a real impact into how I perceive things. Same with music. Music for me is attached to lyrics. Sometimes I can like music and not care about the lyrics, but if the lyrics are good, it just elevates music so much more to me. And I think it's like that with this. And if a book is good and the title is incredible, just the hearing the words of the title gives me a shiver. And again, Sleeping by the Mississippi is one of those that is just the perfect title for what is an incredible body of work.
Yeah.
So obviously, these are the things that are out there that we already respect and love. So I think for me, I had that awareness of that effect that it has on me, and I was hoping that my title would have a similar effect to other people, and that's all you can hope for, So yeah.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Why silence?
I think silence. I mean, aside from the fact that it's just part of the lyric, I think it made sense because I feel like my images are. I've been told this by many people. Sometimes these people don't even know each other, so I know they're being honest. They see that I shoot very quiet images, very very calm images that may have a story or something bubbling in the surface, but effectively they are quiet images. Sometimes they're quiet good, sometimes they're quiet bad, but there's a quietness to them, and I think because of that, when I had the word silence, it just resonated with me, and I felt like it was a good fit with what people have said about my work in the past. I think that's what I'm thinking anyway, or at least maybe the places that I choose to go to.
Let's go inside the first pictures.
Let's do it.
We keep talking about this.
And see if it's a recurring theme.
That is not true, because we're going to say we're keep talking about something and this is not going to happen because we're starting to talking about something else probably.
Yeah, exactly. So something worth mentioning as well here that you might not be able to tell from the book is that if you go back to the previous screen, you'll notice that you have obviously the kind of slightly yellowy kind of paper, but actually the front cover and how it peeks into the first when you open the front cover is actually a dust jacket. And a dust jacket, when we were thinking about this, conceiving the project, we thought it was a very old-fashioned thing to do, and not a lot of books have dust jackets. So I thought it was still important to make the front cover of the actual book, the bound part of the book, beautiful, which I hope I did. But the dust jacket was important to me because I wanted for it to potentially get damaged and to wear away, because dust jackets do. You take them in and out of your bookshelf, and the parts that are folded tend to have a little bit of wear. And I wanted that because that's a reflection of a lot of the images in the book. So I wanted the book to age in the same way as some of the things within the book that I captured had, so I think that was, so even though I didn't like the concept of people potentially handling the book too carefully or never taking it out of the bookshelf, it was almost like the concept was, I liked it so much that I couldn't not do it. So that's why we chose a dust jacket for the book. Yeah.
So I have to destroy a bit my copy because it's still perfect, my copy.
Yeah. Well, mine isn't actually. Mine is kind of getting quite tatty now. So, but I like it. But anyway, we can move on to the first.
But speaking about we can go to this one. But speaking about the sound, the fact that you have this word silent in the title is true.
Yes,
100%. But I can clearly hear sounds. Maybe not coming directly from what you have in front of you, because a lot of time you have almost nothing in front of you. You have few things, but around you.
Yeah.
And probably for other people it's different, of course. And I think this is one of the most beautiful thing of photography, that each one reflect a part of himself inside the picture.
Interpretation, and subjectivity, of course, and I respect that. I think, to be honest with you, as I'm not a musical person, I don't play any instruments, which is one of my life's greatest regrets, but I am a very musical person. I love music. I'm constantly searching for music and listening to music, but for some reason that's not how I relate to the images, weirdly. But I love the fact that people might, in their own way, whatever it might be, whether it's the sound of surf in the background, or whether it's the rustle of leaves in a breeze, whatever it might be, or the sound of traffic, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can have that experience from images, and it's putting you in a world, I think that's fantastic. Obviously, I have my own personal memories to each individual image that I take. Sometimes I'm angry, or sometimes I may have had an argument with someone. Everything, there's a part of you, and when you look at images from any photographer, it's in many ways it's a shame that you're not getting the full story. There's a lot more going on behind each image, not just in terms of what's immediately happened, but also what's happening in your life at the time, especially if something has taken you a long time to shoot. This book took me 3.5 years to shoot, approximately. About 3.5 years to shoot. So there's a lot going on in your life at the time. You're aging. You're you're changing, you're making choices. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, and everything affects everything, and it affects memory as well. But I also like that. It's. I think that's why I love photography so much. It's like a stamp. It's like a stamp that forces you to recall a memory, and I love that about it. Even though I don't necessarily like to document everything, when it comes to things that I love or moments that I love, even when I feel sad, I like feeling sad sometimes. I think it's a natural process of life, and I think photography gives me that. It gives me a very well-rounded way of remembering something. Yeah.
And what about the time of taking a single pictures? Are you like you see something and you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think I'm getting more specific now. I think back then, because I walk everywhere, I don't drive. I've failed my driving test twice now, and it's really annoying. So I am trying. But when I did this book, I was walking everywhere. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, and you're giving yourself. So you're giving a lot of yourself. You know, I'm exhausted, you know, most of the time when I'm shooting for a book, because I'm just walking everywhere 20 miles a day, you know, or 17 miles a day, you know. So sometimes you just land at something when it happens. Sometimes you wish that it would be more horrible or grayer or sunnier or early morning or evening. But it's as you found it. And that's very much how I've shot. I think now things are going to change for me a little bit, but back when I did this, it was very much, you know, when I found it, you know, and but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I do prefer to be out when it's sunny, because then I can enjoy a bigger chunk of my day rather than just rely on the image that I've taken that being good, and the rest of my day is horrific because I'm wet or I'm cold or whatever, you know.
But then, when you finally find something that you want to take a picture of, is it a fast process? Like you take the camera and point and shoot, or?
Sometimes it depends on how far something is, or whatnot. If something is perfect, and I think it might stick around, then I will try and shoot it in better conditions as quickly as possible, because I always live in fear that these things that I've photographed for this book will just disappear, and you'll be amazed by how much of what's in this book is not there anymore. It just doesn't exist. It's I would say more than half of the things that you see in this book just don't exist anymore. Interiors, exteriors, even this first image, you know, that I know that bench is not there anymore, and that grass has been cut back considerably. So for me, it's important to capture. So if I'm there and I see it, if the conditions are not perfect, I will shoot it anyway, just to have it, if I feel the image is strong enough, and I will also go back and try to get better conditions if I feel like I can extract a bit more emotion out of the image. Yeah, but it is untouched. You know, I don't change anything. It's more like I will favor better conditions, because that to me is also reality. You know,
this was one of the questions. If
yes.
you interact with the
no, very rarely. I mean, if I see a piece of rubbish on the floor, I might grab it with my foot and kick it out of the way, but that's as much as I will do. I will not interfere with what I'm seeing, really. And this is a really unusual image, because someone pointed out to me, I don't know how I was blind to this, but I hadn't even noticed the red cap for a long time.
You know,
and someone noticed it, and
it's pretty beautiful.
I didn't even know that it was there. I don't know why. I was just so focused on the image and the ashtray. But I think now that I look at the image, I think that the cap is one of the best things about it. And I think this image, I think for me, it represents a lot of what the book is about. It's about, even though, like you said earlier, there's not a lot of people in the book, this book is all about people. That's what it's all about. And you don't need to have the literal representation of a human being in an image to tell you so much about what people are all about. And I think this one is exactly that. This is clearly a break area for someone. Someone was there. Someone interacted with this place, and it tells you a lot. Especially when an image forms a part of something bigger, it tells you a lot about that. And I love that. You know.
But this is why before I told you that I can hear sounds, because in this one I still can hear people leaving. Maybe they are, I don't know,
putting their backpacks
no,
on.
maybe a bit more far. They are maybe also 100 meters far, but
Right.
I can hear someone laughing,
Someone-
a bit
oh.
too much loud, and also because that small red cup really sign the position of someone sitting on his left in
Yes.
some way, or on his right. I don't know.
Because maybe they were facing them when they were talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why there? Or maybe they could have been on their phone and just put it down there. But I like these questions where there are these questions like, what were they doing? How long was it before they left the area? Who are they? Why is the light so beautiful yet some of the things in it so ugly? So these are the ambiguities that I like. That you do have to ask these questions, or feel like you want to ask these questions and likely never get answers. I don't have the answers for this.
No, of course. But you can turn as many as you want.
Oh yeah, this one. This is an image that I feel it kind of needs to be talked about. It's an important image, I think, in the book, which is slightly annoying for me because it's one of those that it does require an explanation to, because otherwise it just becomes a trope. It's a very British thing to have this type of telephone box. But this area where it is called Beachy Head. It's about maybe an hour away from here, along the coast.
We're in Brighton.
We're in. Sorry, forgive me. Yes, listeners, we are in Brighton, in the south coast of the UK, and this image was actually taken near Eastbourne, in a place called Beachy Head. And Beachy Head is really well known in England as being probably one of the most famous suicide spots in the country. Just beyond that telephone box, where the land meets the sky, that's just a cliff, and it falls down into jagged rocks for about 100 meters. And that telephone box for me is very poignant because you can imagine people having had conversations on there with people, about their situation, about how they were feeling, and whose fates are, is unknown to us. We don't know what happened to them. So that telephone box and that bench just to the right of it, I think are very poignant reminders of the fragility of life. So yeah, it's sad that I can't transmit all of that with just the image. But
this is another theme, quite important, I think, like writing or not writing on a book. And if you write, what are you going to write?
Correct. And then it becomes almost too literal, and we made a decision that we didn't want. I mean, my previous book didn't have any writing in it. This one actually does have a bit more writing in it. But in terms of image descriptions, that I don't think I'll ever want that. It's not something that I like. I don't like to know everything. Me and my partner were talking about this recently, and we know people that always want to know. You watch a David Lynch film, they want to know what it's about, and
Yes.
whereas me and her, we watch films and we're happy not knowing anything, and I'm okay with that, and I understand that some people will be frustrated looking at the book and whatnot, and I'm prepared for that, but it's a decision that I want because of the way that I want to experience things, that I don't want everything to be literal.
I just found a book that I really love, published by Skinner Books.
I'm wondering if it's the same one that I'm thinking it might be.
No, I don't think so, but it could be nice. It's Almanac by Federico Possati.
Oh, I think that was published. By the same. Sorry, it was printed by Maz Matber as well. I think I've seen that book. Maybe not, but it sounds very familiar.
And it's like he done an amazing job with writing and pictures, and I think there is something similar to your work. It's a different body of work, not completely, but there are something touching your work and his work. I'm gonna to record an episode in the near future with him. And he decided to write, for example, in a really poetic way. But let's stop talking about that.
But this is. I just want to say that I do. I mean, one of my favorite books, which I don't own, but one of my favorite bodies of work is Jim Goldberg's Coming and Going. And Jim Goldberg is, I mean, he's a photographer, but really, to me, he's just an artist. You know, he is an artist. I would never call myself an artist. I would say I'm just a photographer. But I think Jim Goldberg is an artist, and his book has tons of writing, and he takes photographs, and then there's writing on the photographs. But sometimes he doesn't do the writing himself. It'll be the protagonist in the image talking about themselves, and the way he does it is marvelous, and it elevates the work so much. But I think in terms of me with image descriptions, I didn't really want to do that. You know,
no, it's always an art topic. I think to decide to put or not words, and how many, and what kind. It's really.
But with Alan, for example, with Alan Salas, you know, annoyingly, I don't own the Rooted Heart, which is a crime in itself. But obviously, I do follow Alan's work on Instagram, and I love how he puts in poetry with his images, because it does elevate the work. I think not that it needs elevating, but it helps it along. You know, because he's not literal, he's not descriptive of the image. It's more like an allusion to a dream, or an allusion to a feeling. And I think when you do that, it can work really, really well. But I haven't found my niche yet in terms of that. Maybe I will in the future, but for the moment, I haven't. And then I think this image, for example, with the house and stuff, it's, you know, I think some images, and this is something that we were talking about earlier, about the importance of images, and I think the images within a book serve a different purpose, and not every image is going to have the same reason for existing within the book. It will sometimes be not filler, but it's almost more like it's just carrying on a feeling more than anything. Or sometimes, depending on the type of book that you're creating, you're sequencing it in a way that you feel like it's a journey that you're passing through a place. You know, sometimes you'll come inside and then you go outside, and then you go into night, and then the next shot is like nothingness, and then it's morning again. So there are different ways that you can sequence a book. So it's a mixture of meaning and feeling. You know, and that is how you're trying to guide the book along. And this image here is an image in England, obviously, but I don't think the meanings are more than just what you see. It is just a gentle scene, and I don't think every image is going to have a really poignant message. You know, I don't think it has to do that. I think some images just need to help the book along and help the narrative along more than anything. A bit like in cinema. You know?
No, 100%. Yeah. But I like a lot the way you push the black in some way in this picture.
Yeah.
Because of course you can see a road.
Yes.
But the road is like in shadow. You have the lights only in the house and in the white thing that I don't know the name in English.
Oh, the picket fence.
That one.
The picket fence, yeah.
It's a bit like it's really dreamy to me.
It is, and it's like a road leading to almost nowhere. You know, you don't know where the road is going to.
The fact is that I'm not sure that if it's a good dream or not.
Or a bad dream.
Yeah, because you have this house with the sun, but you also have this road.
That is dark.
Really dark.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think if you had to be pushed as to the importance of every image, you could probably find more meaning, because there's a reason why I took that image. There's a reason why I was stood there and looked at that and felt like I should take the image. You know, there's always a reason behind everything, and sometimes the reasons are hidden. And like we were saying earlier, sometimes these meanings don't come to any real understanding for you for a very, very long time, or that meaning changes. And I think that's kind of okay, you know. I like discovering meaning,
of course, but
after
a lot of time, I think the photographer feel it, like in some way. You take a picture and maybe you don't have nothing specific in mind in that moment, but you feel it. You feel the moment. You feel what you are seeing.
Yes.
And you choose to put this one in this position, and maybe it was just I don't know. Yeah, it's work here. It lead to the other one and connect the second one to the first one. But this link between the two images sometimes it's also can reveal something more. For example, watching these pictures, I ask myself, am I in a shadow or in light, like me?
Where are you? How do you exist within the?
This is my point of view. The sun is like hitting me or not. I'm in the dark part of the pictures because, of course, you are in a really black corner. But maybe the sun still can touch you in some way.
Yes.
Or maybe not. Maybe you are in a dark part, and it's beautiful that you are watching this house with the light from a really, really dark corner of the images.
Which in many ways is a metaphor for life, I think. And it's weird that you say it like that, because I think that that's going to stick with me, because that's something that, I do say a lot, certainly about myself, in terms of how I deal with things. I deal with things not always in a good way, like most of us are guilty of. I do have ways of being that I wish I could change. But one of the things that I'm like is I don't get too flustered by bad events in my life. I do, obviously, like everyone, like a normal human being. But I think if I have an issue, so long as I can see light at the end of the tunnel, it relaxes me a lot. I don't need the issue that I'm having to be fixed there and then. I'm happy for me to see that it can be fixed. So long as I see a solution, I'm okay. And I think this image could be a metaphor for that, in many ways. I'm in the darkness, but I can see light, or something along those lines. And it's nice, because I would never have thought of that.
But this is why I told you it's a really quiet image in some way.
Yes.
But it's also a bit, you can feel some, I don't know,
tension.
Feel some tension.
Some tension.
And the color lead you in this direction a bit.
Of course, it's taking you there. Yeah, I think if you look at this page, there is a theme of light kind of going across. It's kind of very soft light, and I think that was kind of the natural kind of end, or is ending now. It's like the light is getting even lesser with the citron there in the image, and I think that the image of the citron is very similar to the previous image. One of the things that I notice is that the way the car is parked, the headlights almost seem like they're emitting a light, because of, if you look at the black road, but if you look at the tarmac right in front of the car, is kind of clearer and lighter, so it looks like it's emitting light kind of going forward, but it actually isn't, and then it leads on to the next image. So there is that as well. So there are thematics that make sense as they kind of carry across. Now, weirdly, even though you might argue that the picture of the car is more beautiful than the next one, what I like about the next one is I love the complexity of this image, and it's something that maybe if you're not English or British, you might not understand it as well. But that's a Chinese restaurant, and I know that because I just know that. But obviously, like, a Chinese restaurant is something that I find interesting, much like I do an Indian restaurant in England, because it's very hard to see the differences between what British culture is. It's those lines are beginning to get blurred more and more, and that heater that you see in the background is one of the most English things that I can remember, because my auntie, she had one of those heaters, and they're just so English. I can't explain how English that is. So I love the combination of this Chinese restaurant with a really unfriendly owner, I must add, and this very, very English kind of this heater. And I think that combination between English and kind of other cultures forming new culture, I think is fascinating. And I think it's something that happens not just in England, it happens everywhere, and those lines between cultures being blurred, and then it kind of creates something new. And I don't know, I love that. And sometimes that takes a long time for it to really, really become rooted in the culture. Sometimes it might take a decade, other times it takes 50 years. And before you know it, new definitions are being invented, you know. And I think that image, very much stands out for that. So it was nice to have a deeper meaning other than just the continuation of a narrative, a visual narrative. Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite images, I think. I just adore things like this. I think sometimes I kind of go, like, I almost go, I think of something and I think this is too much, this is too perfect. And images like this, obviously, like, I feel like they are just, it's almost like they're too retro. But then when you realize that there is that there is absolutely no ulterior motive for the owner of this hotel to keep that room like that other than having absolutely no money, it completely changes the meaning of these places, you know. And England is full of these places behind closed doors. You know, it's full of people that are kind of struggling, or people who, you know, who don't care about all the other things that people in other places might care about. Everything is more stripped down to its basic needs. I need a bed and I need a TV, and that's it. You know, I don't need it to be a 50-inch LCD, or, you know, I don't need to have a memory foam mattress. You know, everything becomes much, much simpler. And one of the things that I used to love to do, and I still love to do whenever I go to a place that's off the beaten track, is I like to stay in places that are honest and real, that give me a feeling of the place that I'm visiting. So I don't want to go and stay in a 5-star hotel and have lobster for dinner. You know, I feel like a tourist then. I want to embed myself in what a place is all about, you know, which doesn't mean that I go looking for shitholes, but I will stay somewhere modest, you know. And this just happens to be one of the many places that I stayed when I was...
this picture seems to be like taken in...
1973.
Or maybe also in the 80s. But
or the 80s, sorry, in the 80s, of course, because of the TV. Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, like this is a question that I want to make to you. That your picture seems like I'm not able to understand completely what is the time of your pictures, like, because
I'm glad. This makes me incredibly happy that you said that. I don't want you to know.
Yeah, it's like it's a kind of limbo.
Yeah,
it feels like it's not today. It's not today, and it's not also yesterday in some way. So, how much this temporal thing is important for you?
Massively. It's important to me in so many ways. And, you know, as a lot of photographers will know, you know, when you are making books like this, you know, which are, I'm not going to call my book specific, because in many ways it isn't, because it's photographing things that do exist, that are real, you know. But I think what I mean is, like, when you're photographing things that are outside of the norm, you know, away from the beaten track, you know. You then realize how much of your own personal tastes come into things as well. Like, I like being in quiet places, which confuses a lot of people, because people think that I am a friendly person. I can talk to anybody, and I love people, but I love to be on my own, and I love places that give me the impression that no one's around. Like when I go for a walk in a park or beautiful nature, I don't want to hear roads. I don't want to hear traffic. I want to feel like I'm there on my own, and that feeling is quite addictive. is a feeling, but obviously finding these places requires a lot more effort, because obviously these places are not on places where you're going to find it on Google Maps. You're not going to type in, you know, best places to go to in the south coast of England, because these places will not show up on that. So you do have to walk a lot and discover a lot, and before you know it, you begin to figure out how to find these places. And in all of these places, like, there's a mixture of me doing work, but also me genuinely loving being here, You know, even though this hotel room looks like a shithole to the majority of people, which you could argue it is, I adored staying there. And whenever I go back to this area, I always check to see if I can stay there again, because I get such a kick out of it, of being somewhere that destabilizes me. I love the feeling of being slightly destabilized, like I'm not really in the world that people expect you to be in. I like to be slightly weirded out as much as possible. And I think this image is I think for me a very personal one, because it describes a lot about what I like to do privately. Yeah. Yes. This image. This is an image taken in my ex-partner's mum's house, and I remember I tried to photograph it the previous year and I was unsuccessful. Something happened to the film. I forget what happened to it. It just didn't come out right. So I decided that the following year I would go and photograph it. So I rang her up and I said, I think I asked if it was still the same, and the answer was yes. And I asked about the bar of soap, and the bar of soap had changed. So I brought a bar of soap along with, but the bar of soap matched the color of the one from the previous year. So even though it is doctored, which I do feel a bit bad about, it is the same one as the one from the previous year. So it was something. So this image basically looks like the image from the previous year.
Really honest to say that.
No, and to be honest with you, I've never been honest about it. But this image looks like what it looked like to me the previous year, and I liked how it looked. So I literally just did that. But other than that, the image is as it is, you know. And I think it was just a really interesting composition. I love color. I'm attracted to color like a moth is to light. You know, I just love color, and I especially like unusual things like this. But also, it's worth mentioning as well that I remember, you know, those slightly avocado colored bathroom suites from the 80s. You know, so many of my family members, my English family members, had these in their homes. And for me, it's just a recollection, and I think something that I feel is incredibly English. And I think a lot of people have resonated with this image because they remember that color of bathroom suite. And I think for me, it's like a continuation of my previous book, in which I feel like I'm trying to somehow remember an England as if I've always been in England, which isn't necessarily true. And I think for me, this kind of proves that I kind of do understand England, even to a very small degree. And I think it's something that I think I'll always have, you know, within me, this kind of inadequacy in feeling like, you know, I might look English and act English, but I'm not English. And I think for me that it helps this feeling that I have of identity in that I do feel like it is my home, you know, and I do understand what it's all about, at least from a visual point of view. And yeah, again, this image as well, you know, and this is an image that, again, it's complete happenstance. You know, it's one of those places that I wasn't really there to photograph it. I was actually hungry and I went to eat some chips. And what I love about this place, again, it's another quiet moment. It feels like you can almost populate that table with your own people. You know, you can feel people having having a few cheap beers, you know, over a plate of chips, you know, on the lunch break, and then leaving again, you know, and all the conversation that may have happened at that table. But just as a little side note, again, this is a very traditional fish and chip shop that had been there for, 100 years, however long, but now is actually ran by an Indian family. So the decor is entirely English, but they are Indian, but they've kept everything exactly the same, you know, and serving fish and chips, you know, which is not Indian cuisine, which is great, you know.
And also there is this light. I don't know if it was artificial light or not.
No, it's natural light.
It seems like sunset.
Yeah, it basically is sunset. Yeah,
and the paint
and the paintings,
on the wall.
Yeah,
it's like the same. Like there is a sunset.
Like
that seems to be
exactly.
A sunset.
It's like similar times almost. Yeah.
And also, it, like to me, maybe also because I'm not English, so it's a weird time of the day for this picture in some way. I don't know why. It seems to be not the right time for being this place.
Yes, I would probably agree with that. Which is probably why it's empty.
Like too early or too late.
Yes, and I would probably agree with that. I mean, so much of my time spent shooting, when I was shooting for the book, I would forget to eat, either through excitement or through trying to get to the next place or whatever. The place where this is taken is a very intense place in summer. It's full of people, and it requires a certain level of patience. But this was the first time I'd been to this area, and I remember just feeling so excited. I've got a feeling that I actually just forgot to eat. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like there's some truth to what you're saying. I feel like maybe I was in between lunch and dinner, but probably hadn't eaten breakfast either. So it was like a mixture of all those things, And this is actually the same place. So this is the downstairs of this. So that's the downstairs area. And again, I think it's just a variation of the theme. But what I love about this image, and my favorite part of the image, is I love how the chain is falling over the counter.
It's really weird. It seems like I thought when I saw this image for the first time, I thought it was a mirror in some way.
Yeah.
But then there is the curtains, so it's not.
I just, that curtain falling over the side there it's my favoritist thing. I just love it. It's such a stupid thing to like, but I love that part of it. But again, the decor, forgotten about, probably not updated in 30, 40 years. This Indian family bought the business, and not only did they not update it, but the previous owner probably hadn't updated it for a number of years, and it's like, we don't have to, and I think that says a lot about people and the difference in need that people have, especially where I live, in Brighton, where everything is constantly updated, constantly changing. And I like these places that they have a different concept of how time passes. It's like everything just seems to slow down a lot more, and I find that, really interesting if you can transmit that through an image, even though obviously, like you were saying, you don't know when it was taken, but I can guarantee that it was taken in the last 3 years, or 4 years actually. This one maybe now.
Do you think what role nostalgia has in your images?
I mean, it's probably a big role. I would say it's something that I gravitate. I don't necessarily think I gravitate to nostalgia. Much less so now. I think I'm always interested in things like this, but for me, it's a genuine shock to see images like this, like these scenes that appear out of nowhere. There's a different relationship between me being there and you seeing this image in a book. Those two things are completely different, because obviously people have the ability to go, okay, well, he's just photographing nostalgia, but that's not what I'm thinking. I don't go to these places to photograph nostalgia necessarily. That's not how my brain thinks. For me, it's more like you see a place like this and you go, how the hell is this like this still? Like, how is this still kind of happening, And I think to me that creates a lot of interest and a conversation as to how, especially when you're, I could very easily live in my bubble of Brighton and London, and you don't see these things. They just don't get seen. And I think a lot of people exist in that world. So I think when you do see it, it does impact you. And obviously these things form part of our cultural landscape. And I think they're just as important to photograph as having a record of all of the busts that exist in the museums in England. These things are all forming part of what is a representation of this country, and I think that's why I document it, because I just want to say this was like this. This is what things used to look like, and if we don't document these things, then we just forget. We don't have them anymore. So it is a form of documentation for me as well.
Like Pasolini.
Yeah, or I mean, anybody that did like topographics,
Yeah.
it's just a way of documenting the land, and like Stephen Shore, obviously, did this impassionately for a number of years. He just documented intersections. That's all they are, really. They're just intersections, and him passing along. But in him photographing his breakfast, it shows you like what they used to eat, what I used to eat, what was a normal. They would serve you melon as part of your meal. You trying to get a melon served in a Denny's in America now would never happen. So it's interesting to see how tastes change and culture changes as you go along, and that's it for me. It pretty much lives and dies there. That's how I see it. But yes, it is nostalgic as well, because of what it means and represents, and images of your childhood, or an English childhood, that people would have had. I remember like peeking over the counter, or when my dad was like ordering fish and chips, and it looked exactly like that. So I do understand that it does play, a lot of importance. And yeah, this image is is one that I always try to skip by because it's hard to explain. I think for me, I just love the graphical impact of the word defect, especially as this place was exactly what it was, and sadly it doesn't look like that anymore. But it was incredibly awful place. This basically is a waiting area for bus drivers to go and take their break. So whenever in between journeys, they would go to the bus depot and they would take the break in this place. And I'm not really sure as to what the defect would be, or who would put a paper on this defect tray. And I think that's why I liked it. And obviously the colours are good. The primary colours are always draw the eye. But I love the graphical power of the word defect, but also the lack of understanding as to what the defect would be, because you don't know what this place is. Obviously, I've told you now what it is.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe it's a bus driver making a note as to what's wrong with their bus, and then the bus gets repaired. Like, it could be anything.
But also, I think looking at this picture, you start searching for where is this
meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that
you cannot find it. Like, I didn't find it.
And you won't find it.
It can be everywhere.
It could be.
To be honest,
it could be. It could be. I think if you were a detective, you might be able to find what it is. But that's kind of part to why I like it. I think it was more a bit of fun for us to include this image as well. Oh yes. I do love this image. Just from an image point of view, really. This was taken in the Isle of Wight, which is a small island just off the coast of England. And again, this is a series of motels, or a motel, should I say, that was about to be torn down. I'm sure it has now. I mean, I haven't been back to the Isle of Wight since then. But I was actually looking for another motel that I'd visited maybe 3 or 4 years before, and all I found on the ground was the imprint of it. So if you imagine being in a snowy field,
yeah,
and you just see your footprint. It was like that. So on the ground, they'd actually completely, like, diggers must have come in and just got rid of all of the old buildings, but you could see it imprinted into the grass.
Did you take
into the
pictures?
ground. I couldn't. You needed an aerial shot,
yeah.
And I couldn't get but I would have loved to have done that. It would have been great. But yeah, it was everywhere. You could see the imprint everywhere. It was absolutely incredible. And then a few miles down, I found this one that I didn't even know existed. And some people told me that it was about to be torn down, which was ironic because I found it to be so utterly beautiful, and then just beyond that, it's just a cliff. So maybe it could have been a safety issue. A lot of cliffs around the English coast are crumbling, so it could have been a safety issue. Yeah.
Do you think Ian is completely wrong to say that this kind of nostalgia that exists in your pictures is because maybe you see something really beautiful in the past that you are not able to find maybe in the present days?
I would probably say that almost without question. Yes, I would say that. Yeah, there are things that exist in the present day that they're not as nostalgic. Obviously, houses in England are all at least 150 years old, all of them, you know, which in the States are like, oh my God, that's crazy, you know, but in England, houses are anywhere, like a normal house is anywhere between 100 to 700 years old. This is normality. So these things stand everywhere, and they're not special because they are everywhere. But in terms of what's happening that's new, from new buildings going up to design to whatever it might be, it's something that I'm not terribly interested in. I just simply don't like what it looks, how it looks. And I'm not sure why that is. It's maybe a personal thing, just like why you might like blue more than red. I'm not entirely sure why that is. But I think for me, it's more complicated than that. I also like if this scene had lots of people running around or anything else to spoil it, it would have changed it for me. Because there was no one there, it made it even more special. Because these huts are not new, but they're not old enough to look terrible yet. And you can see the grass has been cut. So someone is still maintaining this, and you can see those bushes in the back, they're still being pruned. So there's a certain question mark over this as well, you know, and you kind of wonder, like, why is it still there? So even though, yes, it is there's a certain truth to what you're saying, I think my choices for what to photograph sometimes can be more complex. Not that they're complex, but there's other reasons behind photographing them, you know. And this one's obvious as well, you know. It was almost like I was slapping myself. Couldn't believe that the light could be so perfect, you know. Like it was.
Did you wait for it, or it was like that?
If anything, I waited too long. I think if you look at the huts to the right, they were slightly more. They were more bright. They were as bright as the ones on the left. But I think I'd run out of film, so I had to load the Mamiya again to capture it. So I think maybe. I was a bit slow, but or maybe the light was changing, because as you can see, it was a bit cloudy as well. So
yeah,
I think it could have been very changeable lights. It was one of those things, but I think the ones on the left are well enough illuminated to warrant the picture kind of being okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. What a pairing. Yeah, I mean. I just moving on from what we were saying, you know, these there's unusual spaces, you know, and I think, you know, certainly the pink house with the blue tractor, I think is beautiful. I remember seeing that image and just reacting to it, thinking to myself, like, this is staggeringly beautiful. This is a romance to it. I couldn't understand it, almost as if maybe it's because I was so in this world at the time. I actually thought that there was a chance that maybe the blue tractor was almost like an ornament because it was so beautiful, you know. Like the owner of the house puts it there to show off, you know. What is more than likely is more like that tractor's been sat there for a very long time, because maybe the money isn't there to run it anymore, or to make it, you know, to make it run again, you know. It's just forgotten about, and I like that kind of ambiguity where you don't know what's happening, you don't know what the reason is for that, you know. Something has gone, it's almost gone full circle. Like the house maybe started out being beautiful when it had its fresh coat of paint, and then it's gone through all these transitions to then looking horrible because they had nothing in the front yard. And now, through time, taking these things and changing them, it's kind of gone the other way, and it's become beautiful again, you know. And it's interesting to me. And then, this is just someone's office, and it felt like they just left for the day and never returned. You know, it still had
in the 80s also this one, because it's incredible. Like,
I actually don't think so. I think it was used like this even up until maybe 10 years ago. You know, I think there was things on this office that.
So do you think it's not used right now?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is anymore. this is a very strange place where I photographed this. A very normal place in many ways, but also a very strange one at the same time.
It reminds me the office of my father in the 80s, really. 100%.
Yeah, I think many people's, that wooden paneling, But I just love how much confusion there is in this image. There's an Alfa Romeo at the top, and obviously all these pictures of cats. It's like they're all different. So I don't know, were they the person's pets?
A lot.
Yeah. Maybe it was pets at different years. Like maybe each pet died when they were 12 years old. So maybe he was putting pictures up on that wall for 40 years. Who knows? But again, I love that all these questions are being raised, because the majority of people will know that this picture was taken in the last 3-4 years. It wasn't taken in 1978 or whatever it was. It was taken recently. So why is it still like this? Why has no one done anything about this, considering the rampant change that we always go through? Yeah, and again, I think this was taken during the pandemic, and people are amazing. People will always find a way of making themselves happy in some way, and sometimes that happiness isn't the prettiest, but it's what they need. People don't stay still for very long, and something like in lockdown, where you can just kind of have a plastic pool outside and just put yourself in it because it's hot outside. And I remember summer of 2020 was very hot. I remember, and I've just always loved this image because I find it so ugly, but also incredibly beautiful at the same time. I think because of what it represents as well. It's a very specific point in time, but also something kind of very universal as well. Can't afford a pool? Well, doesn't matter. We're going to stick one outside anyway. And
yes.
The kids will love it in exactly the same way.
Of course.
Kids won't care. The kids won't care. The kids will absolutely love that. So yeah, I think this one's called Blob, because I think that's just how I look at it. It just looks like an ugly blob in a garden.
You give a name of each picture?
Sometimes I do. Yeah, it's whatever just arrives in my head, And I think this one I just called it Blob. It
looks like it's just fell down from the sky.
Yeah, and just landed there perfectly. Yeah, or it was lowered by helicopters. Yeah. And this one is much the same. I sometimes kind of wonder, like, you have these tropes of beauty, and there's like a strange beauty sometimes to the landscape, and that you don't really see anymore. And I think this tree is one of them. I looked at this tree and I was thinking it's summertime, but the tree's not sprouting any kind of leaves or any greenery, but it's so perfectly round in its circumference, and I kind of wonder, well, what's happening here? It's kind of dead, but also feels like it's being treated like it's alive, and a point is being made to keep it there. Sadly, I can actually tell you that this tree is no longer there anymore. I think eventually someone said it's too ugly or whatever, and they've since chopped it down, so it's not actually there anymore.
And it's also hiding a specific kind of house.
A static caravan, yeah, which is a very traditional way of English people to take their holidays, what they call a staycation. When you don't go abroad, you stay in England. You would traditionally have one of these. You might own it or you might rent it, but also incredibly bright one as well. I think many of the caravans here in this place were actually from the 50s and the 60s. And I have no idea why. If it was in Brighton, probably someone bought them to charge people like a ridiculous amount of money to stay in a vintage one. I think this place is not like that. I think they're just old because they are, and that's it. But and again, I think this image is beautiful, but it's a very alternative version of beauty, and I obviously understand that. But yeah, and obviously I love the shadow. Some images are just images, and they work. And I think the shadow just works incredibly well. And I also like to think about the people that maybe stayed there who would have maybe had a picnic under that tree, 40 years ago. Oh yeah, this one. And this image, I didn't want to include it at first because I didn't think anyone would believe that I didn't bring that orange ball with me. And the reason I gave it so much thought was because in my previous book, I'd photographed something similar. I think it was a caravan, and the caravan was white and it had a yellow stripe, and there was another yellow ball beneath it. And I think I think whoever parked the caravan in the street had not meant to park it there. So the council came and clamped it, and the clamp was yellow. And I couldn't believe that all these things were there. So many years later, when I ended up seeing this scene, I thought, oh my gosh, if anyone buys both of my books and sees this, they're going to just think I'm carrying balls around with me and putting them in the right place. But actually, that wasn't the case. That ball was just there, and I have no idea why. And it just happened to match the color of this Volkswagen Beetle just perfectly. And it was just there, you know. And I remember people passing by just didn't know what the hell I was doing, like why I was photographing it. But to me, it was just too good to be true and too good to pass up. Otherwise, there's not really an image there, you know. I mean, the car is pretty, but
yeah, but sometimes also these small things that happens can really
it just
catch your attention and works in some way.
Yeah, I mean, the colours are pretty and it's a nice time of day, but I think the inclusion of the image is because of the orange ball, because it's like, what's happening here, you know? And now I'm actually happy if people do think that maybe I did bring a ball, which I didn't, but if they do, it's like, it's just another question that will never be answered.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because I have a train in a while.
We have to speed up
to London, and because I want to speak also with you as a friend out of camera, let's say. Do you want to choose like the 3 pictures that for you represent most this work, or maybe also just for a personal reason?
Yeah, because otherwise otherwise I'll talk about all the images.
No, but
I don't necessarily
I'm
want
thinking to do like, if you have time, we can also think to do a second episode about this book, because I really like it, and probably also the people want to know more about these images, also because it's a huge book.
It is a huge book. Yeah,
like it's not really
it's not like 30 images.
One.
I think it's got 80 images in it, something like that.
Why you decide to put so many? Like,
I didn't want to. I didn't want to initially.
How many pixels did you want?
I think maybe 40. 40 images, maybe 30 to 40 images. But
how many now?
But the pool of images was 200.
Okay.
I had 200 images, and that was already narrowed. So I think it's just the way that we sequenced it. There was, you know, Tom Booth who did the majority of the sequencing. I thought he was going to chop me down, and he didn't. You know, he just went crazy.
He said all in. Like.
He just went all in, and and Tom is an experienced photobook maker, you know, and I thought, oh, Tom's going to chop me back, and he didn't. And he just went crazy. And then when Tom left the project, and then Ben took it over. Ben loved the sequence, so I had no one telling me no.
It's a book that you have to watch again.
Yes,
and again
and absorb. Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of images that really resonate with me, I think this is one of them, and I think this one is. I think this is an image. So this place is not... Actually, this place is a bit of a graveyard for the old British telephone box. But it is a business, you know, and the place actually refurbishes these to put them in rich people's houses, because once they're refurbished, they cost about £7,000 or £8,000, I think. But obviously, these phone boxes, to me, are they're a relic of the past, a relic of Britain, and the red telephone box is as strong as the London black cab or the double decker bus. You know, it's just it's almost like attached to Britain and England, and seeing them all like this all together, like as if it is a graveyard, was almost like the fall of empire, you know, the end of empire, you know, and I think just the image just grabbed me like so hard, and there's a strange beauty to it. There's a strange tragedy to it. You know, these once proud kind of mainstays of the British landscape are now just basically rotting in a field, slowly being refurbished, but many times not. Sometimes maybe sometimes they're just too damaged, and they'll just sit there until they get demolished or thrown away. But each of them has a history, and each of them had someone making phone calls and communicating something, and I think having them all in one place in different eras, because you can tell if you're a real geek about them, they're all slightly different. So the ones on the left-hand side are 70s, and the other ones are a bit more modern. So I just love that there's a massive conversation happening with this image, and I feel like maybe they're all talking to each other as well, like old friends.
Choose another one, then I'm going to choose the last one.
Yeah, okay. This is one that I think means a lot to me, simply because I remember when I was a student, when I was studying film at university, someone said to me that I wanted to do a project about the passage of time without any words or narrative, and they said that it couldn't be done. And it always stuck with me. And fast forward 20 years later, and I feel like I managed to take a picture of something that does show the passage of time. And the ironic thing is that I could have actually included two of these images taken about 3 or 4 months apart, when the car doesn't actually have the moss growing on it because it was summertime. This is in wintertime. So it's amazing to see that this thing is kind of standing still, and time is just attaching it's attaching itself onto it in a very visual way. And not only did I get a kick out of the fact that I wish I could send these images to this person who I have no more contact with, and say, look, I did it, But also I thought it was beautifully poignant as well that, you could show, the passage of time. And I think it's an error on my part in not including the second image, because I framed it almost exactly the same way. And I think it would have been lovely to have had the two side by side. And I think that's one of my biggest regrets. And maybe something I shouldn't say about my own photo book, but I do feel that regret. And I think everyone feels a bit of regret about some decision that was made on a book, or
100%.
Everyone does. And I think that's something that's quite natural from everybody. I don't think.
But also, if your book is amazing, it's perfect. You, as a photographer,
you will always have an issue. And I think
dimension, paper, smell.
Yeah. And
everything.
I think for me, like this image as well, because it's not particularly beautiful, I think it kind of represents that, like it's not just about taking a beautiful image, I think if you can take a beautiful image, then take it by all means. But I think there's a certain power to just image making, and I think this image very much represents that to me, because I feel a lot when I see this image, even though it's not of something that is traditionally beautiful, like a sunset or a landscape. It's something ugly and old and forgotten, but also that means a lot and says a lot. And I think that's incredibly meaningful, because this book is all about, it's not all about, but a significant part of it is about the passage of time, and how time changes things, both in the things themselves and in you as well as a person, and I think this image is such a big representation of that.
I think in a symbolic way it like condensed the meaning of all the pictures that we spoke about now. So my pick is going to be the fox. I think it's so beautiful.
Mr. Foxy Man, as I like to call him. Yeah.
So sad.
It's incredibly sad, and I also think it's incredibly beautiful. And as a side note, when I first shared this image on my Instagram many years ago, 4 years ago maybe now, it had the most ridiculous level of engagement. I've never had as much engagement on anything that I've posted on Instagram as much as this. It got something like 20,000 likes and about 500 comments. It just went crazy. And it was amazing to see the division that it created amongst people in terms of how they responded to this. Some people said that it was beautiful. Some people hated my caption. And my caption, I think, said something like, something along the lines of not my usual type of image, but I thought that this fox looked majestic in death. And 4 years later, 4.5 years later, I look at the image and I feel exactly the same way. I think it still looks beautiful in death.
It's like in some way the fox seems to be alive, searching for something in that direction.
Or just looking for something.
Yeah.
Because it's so vibrant. It looks like it's just been placed there. You know, it almost looks like the death of Ophelia. You know, the death of Ophelia, the famous painting. I forget who initially painted it, but, you know, the death of Ophelia, the way she's perceived in the painting, she almost looks too perfect to be dead. And that's not what I was thinking, obviously, you know. Maybe now I think like that because it's been 4 years that I've had to think about it. But when I chanced upon this image, I didn't think that. But I thought it was something important to capture because, you know, it does have such ambiguity because it almost forces you to have it forces you to react to it. You know, and I like it, but without being graphic. It's not. I don't think it's a graphic image.
It's really connected to the work.
It's a very similar conversation. It's there's. I like to feel like the work can be layered depending on what you want to talk about, but the ambiguity is something that I'm very, very interested in. I love ambiguity, and I think it's something that I naturally put into the images that I make, even without meaning to sometimes. It's just what I'm attracted to. And I think this image, even though it's of the subject matter is of something dead and is very different to the other things, in many ways those other things are also dead, you know. And I think there's a parallel there. Aside from the ambiguity of the image in itself, you know, there's a parallel there in the fact that these things are kind of done. They are almost no more, you know.
But almost she's in like dirty. There is a lot of dirty thing around.
Yeah.
But if you look in the bottom part of the image, you see a kind of sky. It seems that she's flying. She's flying because like the nature is calling him back.
Almost, yeah.
You see, like the trees are like taking her back again on the nature because it's the cycle of life.
The cycle of life. It's like it's going. It's like in between two worlds.
Yeah.
It's like its physical presence still makes sense in the living world, but effectively it's in a place where it's in between places, you know, and it's interesting from that point of view. Yes, but yeah, I'm glad you like that image. It's one of my favorites as well.
So I want to ask you something a bit more generic.
Yeah, please.
Did this project make you discover something about yourself during this process of making it? Everything.
And not just. I mean, if we stick to this project, I think this work is a work that I've, you know, since revisited, and obviously every so often I've got to dip back into it to send images to someone like yourself, and I have a new experience every single time. But I think the thing that it tells me is it tells me a lot about me, about my own sense of where I am in the world and how and why I think about things. It also allows me to think more critically about my tastes and the things that I like and what I don't like. It also gives me a wider sense for what's happening in the country that I live in. Talking to people, because for many of these images, you know, even though there might not be someone there, I may have had an interaction with someone maybe 5 minutes before, and something that I actively seek as well. So when you're doing something for as long as this, you end up learning so much from different people about what their loves are and what their worries are, about how the place has changed and how they feel about it. Sometimes they're grateful and sometimes they hate it. But it's taught me a lot about my own tastes, my own position on things, and my opinions on things, but also about myself, just the sheer amount of time spent walking around on my own and thinking about all these things in your head, it's everything. It's given me everything. It's the only way that I can put it. It wasn't a job. It was a joy, you know. Not always a joy, but it means everything to me. You know, and in many ways, even though I'm not doing this type of work anymore, as much as I was, I would love to do it again 20 years from now or 10 years from now, because it opens up so much of you, you know. And I dread to think what I'm going to be like in 20 years, but hopefully photography will help me then as well.
Of course. Do you think you discovered something during this project that can, let's say, help someone that is approaching photography right now as a new photographer?
With this specific project?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, always think about why you're doing something. As a general sense, you know, if you're thinking about... There's two sides of that. There's two ways that I can answer that question. You might already know what you want to shoot, and then you've got to think about how to fill your project with images, in which case you've got to think about every individual image that you take and what it's saying about what you want to say. How is it helping your story or your narrative along? But if you're thinking just about creating something, think about why it is that you want to say what you want to say. You know, what is it about it that inspires you, or what is it about it that makes you have questions? You know, like, think critically about your images, because it will help your narrative so much. And once you start shooting, it'll begin to show itself to you. It will present itself, and sometimes it will teach you something that you didn't even know at the beginning. And I think that's really wonderful. Obviously, if you're following a narrative that's a lot more clear-cut, like the story of a person or whatever, it could be very easy. And then you have to then take an abstract, which is your idea, and the image, and make it fit into a narrative. But I think if you're doing something that is already, or begins as more abstract, narrowing it down is something that might just present itself after 6 months of shooting, and it will begin to focus itself, and it will naturally begin to show itself to you. You know, and I think that's really wonderful. And I think that process can be stressful, and it can also be incredibly rewarding. And I certainly found that with this project, because what it ended up being is not what I thought it was going to be. It only showed itself to me maybe midway through, maybe just after that. And sometimes it'll even show itself at the end when you're sequencing. You'll see a sequence and you'll go, Christ, why didn't I see this before? You know?
And one record to listen watching this book, if there is any.
Oh, one record.
Just one. I know your passion for the music, so...
So one album.
Yeah.
Shall I say one album to listen to?
Or one song.
Or one song. I think if it was just one song, I think maybe we'll keep it to one song. It's a song called The Yellow Princess by John Fahey. He was like a guitarist. He did finger picking. And he's a wonderful, wonderful guitarist, my God. When you hear one of his songs, you can't even believe that he's got no accompaniment, because he's doing everything with just one hand. He's playing the kind of bass strings, and it just has a mastery of it. It just sounds like a world. But what I love about this song specifically is that I feel like it's the closest representation of life that you can have in one song without any words. It feels like it goes through the whole gamut of life, from happiness to sadness, and then complete rock bottom, to then coming up the other side again, where there's light again.
I'm gonna check for it.
It's a song. I mean, I hate saying my favorite, but if someone put a gun to my head and said, "What's your favorite song?" and I said that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It is a song that's been with me for 20 years, and whenever I hear it, it has the exact same effect it did the first time I listened to it. It just hasn't changed, and it has this real driving power, which is the energy of life, but also giving you the lows and the highs, you know. And I think this book very much can represent some of that as well.
So our last question is, if you have any book to suggest us to have as a guest.
Ooh, which book would I? If no one has heard Sean Davey speak about Alice or looking for Alice, I would wholeheartedly recommend that. It is, I think it's one of the greatest ever photography books, I think, in terms of everything. It's just a representation of what humans are like. It's a very honest depiction of humanity. Some might argue even inhumanity. But the reasons for doing it are just wonderful. And Sean's a wonderful photographer anyway, a very natural photographer. But the way she talks about the book is very, very special, and something that I couldn't do it too often because it's really impacting. But it's quite an experience. Yeah. So Sean Davey, I believe it's called Looking for Alice or just Alice. Yeah, that's the name of it.
Amazing. Thanks, Ian. It was a beautiful 1 hour and a bit.
Yeah, I could have probably gone for another hour.
No, and it was really. It's a pity that all the time there is something that me or the other people needs to do. But yeah, we can come back to this book if you want. If you have the time, we can also do it online.
Of course, I'm more than happy to. You know, if you want me to talk about anything relating to the book, I'll be more than happy to. Reasonably comfortable in doing so, even when I am finding out new things with your help. I think from that point of view, I would find it interesting again. So of course, I would love to.
Also, you can come to visit us in our city, and we can do one more time in person. That is more beautiful.
Any reason to visit Italy is
good.
I'll go for any reason.
So thanks I'm a bit tired. Thanks so much to everybody to watch this episode. It was lovely. And if you like, subscribe. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me.
It was a great pleasure. I was waiting for it.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Ciao.